My name is Gene Xu. I'm an ABC. That's American-born Chinese.
It's a topic that continues to evolve, and that is racism.
At the intersection between America and China, I'm concerned about the lack of cultural awareness on both sides.
What you're going to experience is going to be completely different from what I experience.
But I'm still optimistic about the future for my unborn son. Generational ABC podcasts are my conversations with my unborn son, one ABC to another, in my attempt to explain our world in context in order for him to make better sense of his world, which will be nothing like the world we live in today.
The first thing they thought was I knew Kung Fu because the only Chinese person they had ever heard of was Bruce Lee. Hey little buddy, it's your father again. As you can see, it's not morning this time. It's actually Sunday afternoon. Your mother and I were at a kind of a workshop seminar all day, so I actually didn't get the chance to talk to you in the morning, but I'm making it up. So as I'm thinking about talking to you, I'm trying to imagine at what age I'm actually talking to you. I mean, how old are you when you are listening to this message? So I want to talk about kind of your more earlier years when you're growing up. Obviously, you're going to be growing up in America like your father grew up. And I want to talk about a topic that's very interesting. It's a topic that continues to evolve, and that is racism. And there's all kinds of racism, and racism is one of the things that currently divides America. And of course, Chinese people are not without racism based on what the definition of racism is, but just racism towards people who are Chinese in America or just Asian in America. What you're going to experience is going to be completely different from what I experienced. So a little bit about what I experienced. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, as we talked about earlier, and I was really the only Chinese or Asian kid in my entire elementary school, first grade through seventh grade, I think it was. And so if I think back at that time of whether I experienced racism, I would have to say the answer is no. I never experienced racism, but I did experience a lot of ignorance, okay? And I think, as I'm thinking about it now, I think there's a difference between racism and ignorance. So for example, when I was growing up, I did have some children, not my close friends, but other children used kind of like racial slurs against Chinese people, okay? I also would meet new kids, and the first thing they thought was I knew Kung Fu because the only Chinese person they had ever heard of was Bruce Lee. So everybody thought because I was Chinese or because I was Asian looking, I should automatically know Kung Fu. So other than that, sometimes being I would actually be called things that would be considered racial slurs today. But you know, this is coming from children, and children generally are ignorant. And if we fast forward to today and some of the things that we experience, I think a lot of adults are also ignorant. And ignorance doesn't necessarily mean racist, okay? So, yeah, so I guess the real lesson or the real thing that I want to really convey to you is when you grow up here in Southern California, you know, in 20 something, 25, 26, 27, the level of ignorance is going to be much less than what I experienced growing up in the 70s and the 80s, because we're educated differently about world affairs and global events, and we have more interactions with people of different ethnicities and different cultures. So it's going to be different, but I guess I just want you to kind of start to be aware and try to distinguish the difference between racist and ignorance. And it's kind of like giving people the benefit of the doubt. Most people are ignorant. In fact, if you lack awareness, you are ignorant. That's almost the definition of being ignorant, is lacking awareness. And in the case of, between America and China, I think both sides lack cultural awareness, which means both sides, no matter how emotional they get towards the other side, they're more ignorant than they are racist or discriminatory. But sometimes the outcomes or the results are discriminatory, but it's derived from ignorance rather than racism. Because I can remember when I was growing up in Atlanta in the early 70s and 80s, and if I think about what I actually experienced, anything that was negative related to the fact that I was of Chinese ethnicity, it wasn't racism, it was ignorance. But emotionally, it may feel the same when you're actually experiencing it. So yeah, that's just a really interesting thing, that you're going to be growing up in an environment where you're not the only Asian kid or Chinese kid. In fact, the Caucasian Americans or the white kids may be actually in the minority when you're growing up here. So not only do you have to be aware of what people say to you, you also want to make sure that you are not ignorant or lack awareness towards other people when you're speaking to them, especially if they don't share your views or you feel that they are different. Okay? So yeah, I'm gonna keep this up. You don't have a name yet. I'm gonna actually go on a walk with you very shortly, because your mom and I, during pregnancy, we have to walk as many times per day as we can. So yeah, look forward to seeing you soon. And I can't wait to hold you in real life. Love you, little buddy.
Listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or YouTube.